Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us on KREM 2 News First at 4. I'm Tom Sherry. Today, we are taking some time to honor and celebrate the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. For many people, this is a day to look back on his incredible life and service to the country, pushing for equality. And while Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day has now become a broadly celebrated holiday, KREM 2's Channing Curtis explains it took quite a long time to get to this point.
The journey for Martin Luther King Jr. Day to become a federal holiday was a long one, and it began in 1968. Representative John Conyers Jr. sparked the idea right after the assassination of the civil rights leader. Throughout the 70s, support grew. Several states, including Illinois, Massachusetts, and Connecticut, became the first states to enact statewide King holidays. But Congress failed to act on a national level. Dr. King's wife, Coretta Scott King, fought for approval, testifying before Congress several times. But things finally started to change in the 80s when Stevie Wonder joined the fight. That's right, the R&B legend wrote this version of Happy Birthday not only as an ode to Dr. King, but a way to put pressure on lawmakers to make his birthday a national holiday. So at that time, support continued to grow. By 1981, 12 states made Dr. King's birthday a local holiday with marches and a day of service planned. By 1983, President Ronald Reagan signed a bill to make it happen, and in January of 1986, the first National Martin Luther King Jr. holiday was observed.
Well, all day, people across the world have been honoring Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. through acts of service. But COVID has changed the way that some are celebrating his legacy. Gonzaga, Whitworth, and Eastern Washington universities hosted a virtual event to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. Day. The event featured spoken word, singing, dancing, and guest speakers. During the event, the Martin Luther King Jr. Center Executive Director reminded attendees of the food drive they're hosting through the end of January. She says it's important to support the food drive, not just on today's day of service.
We are making sure that food insecurities are being addressed here in our community. The food bank during this pandemic have seen an increase in the number of people that are seeking out food just to make ends meet.
The center's food bank is asking the community for brown rice, pasta noodles, and wheat bread. The center is also collecting books, putting together winter packages, and accepting cash donations until the end of the month, all to celebrate Dr. King's impact. In Washington, D.C. today, activists marched for voting rights to commemorate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. This march comes amid frustration over a voting rights bill being held up in Congress. Democratic lawmakers came up short on a promise to vote on a Senate rule change aimed at a key voting rights bill. The law would make Election Day a federal holiday. It would also require states to allow early and mail-in voting. 19 states have passed legislation making voting harder, including placing limits on drop boxes. This morning, Vice President Kamala Harris spoke on the importance of getting the bill through the Senate while she was volunteering at a nonprofit soup kitchen in Washington, D.C.
This is literally about the future of our country in terms of its democracy. And we have to remain deeply committed to getting this done and seeing it through. However long it takes, but right now we have bills before us. The United States Senate has the opportunity, and I dare say the responsibility, to pass these bills through Congress so the President can sign them.
The Senate is expected to take up the House bill passed on Tuesday. Well, we are wrapping up a pretty mild three-day weekend. We even had a little bit of sunshine peeking through on Sunday. Hopefully you also took advantage of Free State Park Day and the dry weather that we saw and got outside. So for a look at our forecast this week, let's go outside to meteorologist Thomas Patrick.
Hey there, Tom, and you and I pretty relaxed in the weather department this week. Nothing major really expected, just kind of more of the same. Fairly quiet weather, bit of patchy fog here or there, so obviously we'll still be very cautious of that for tonight and again for tomorrow morning. But Weather-wise, a little bit of sun peeking out for today, and all in all, pretty quiet weather as we head into the middle stages of January. Some fog advisories in some of the southern areas, so this is out of the National Weather Service in Pendleton, reissuing freezing fog advisories. This would be for Dayton, Walla Walla, out towards Yakima yet again for tonight. But no dense fog advisories for Spokane, at least not seeing that advisory issued again for this evening. Nonetheless, a patchy fog is possible. Little disturbance is slipping through the region up from the Silver Valley towards Lookout Pass. Might be seeing some light precipitation, so we'll look at one of the cameras out there. I think it might be a fine snow, so very light stuff. Looks like wet road conditions, but not icy at the moment out towards Lookout Pass. But Spokane has remained dry for today, but our temperatures just below freezing. You see that cloud cover picking up. That will likely be some fog, but we'll show you how patchy versus widespread that fog is going to be in the coming days and when to expect some widespread precipitation later on this week as well.
Thank you, Thomas. Well, new tonight, the Reardon-Edwall School District has announced its move to planning to move to remote learning this week. A spike in COVID cases has led to critical staffing shortages. The district hopes to or had hoped to avoid going online, but they just had too many teachers, transportation, and support staff that were still out sick. The district is still coordinating food deliveries for families on remote learning days. COVID testing is also being offered for students and staff at the elementary school. The district is also deploying 2 Wi-Fi buses. That's for families who need to connect to the district's internet. Spokane Public School students will also have an extra day off tomorrow. That's due to staffing shortages brought on by COVID. SPS says schools are facing a large number of staff absences every day, and with public health officials believing the Omicron surge will peak sometime next week, they want to prepare. SPS will not offer morning or afternoon childcare on Tuesday. Sports and other extracurricular activities are also going to be adjusted later this month. Students will likely be out of school on Monday, January 24th. They plan to let parents know no later than this Thursday if that's going to be the case.
This is adjusting the school calendar, postponing those student days to March that were previously planned as non-student days, which will enable us to have some additional time to bring staff back from quarantining as well as catch up with contact tracing.
This announcement follows several schools in our area deciding to postpone their rivalry basketball games at the Spokane Arena. They're going to postpone them until February. Coeur d'Alene schools also put their students on notice last week. The district is considering a return to remote learning. Well, with the current surge in cases caused by the Omicron variant, many people have had to find a way to get tested. But as you well know, tests are not easy to come by right now. Our own Ian Smay joins us live in the newsroom with more on why it's so hard to find a test. Ian.
Yeah, Tom, we all probably know someone who has complained about not being able to find a COVID-19 test, or maybe you struggled to find one yourself after being exposed or showing symptoms. According to the Spokane Regional Health District, the problem is real and is caused by supply issues. Spokane Regional Health District spokesperson Kelly Hawkins told me earlier today that supply is failing to keep up with the demand as the highly contagious Omicron variant has become the dominant strain of coronavirus. Hawkins said the problem has persisted for the last couple of weeks. They're hopeful that the federal at-home testing program starting Wednesday can alleviate some of that. The program will allow households across the country to order up to 4 free at-home tests. This comes as people in Spokane are struggling to find a place to schedule an appointment for a COVID-19 test.
It was pretty difficult, actually. I looked online. I didn't have anything publicly available until Friday, and obviously that's not going to work. You know, it needs to be immediate.
Pretty difficult in our area. We're out from Moon Lake, and everybody's out at the tests.
We also looked at other places for tests today. As of this morning, the Spokane Falls Community College testing site was booked until Thursday, while the Spokane County Expo Center had appointments on Thursday, but nothing before that. Coming up at 5 tonight, I'll have more on how this testing shortage is affecting other places that normally offer COVID testing. In the newsroom, Ian Smay, KREM 2 News.
Well, if you do end up finding an over-the-counter COVID test, you shouldn't have to pay for it. The federal government is now requiring insurance companies to pay for up to 8 COVID tests per person per month. You can either give your insurance information when you check out, or you can file a claim after you've bought the tests. Your insurance company should reimburse you. Well, later this week, the National Guard and National Guard members should arrive at a number of Washington hospitals, including Spokane's Sacred Heart, all to help with critical staff shortages. State lawmakers in Olympia introduced 2 bills to help keep people in the healthcare industry. The bills would change the way that hospitals treat their staff by limiting how many patients can be assigned to each nurse. And the bills also ban required overtime. Unions liked the proposals, while Washington State Hospitals Association says they have some concerns.
This bill would be imposing more limits and constraints on our ability to stretch staff so that they can serve patients in these really challenging circumstances instead of providing more flexibility.
A public hearing on the House bill is set for this Wednesday. Well, after 2 amazing games this weekend, the Zags are back on top of the poll. That's right, the AP poll, that is. The Zags crushed BYU, and then they, on Saturday, had another large win against Santa Clara. Those wins secured the Zags the top spot this week. This is the second time now that the Bulldogs have been ranked #1. They started the season in the top spot until that loss to Duke. So far, the Zags are 14-2 for the season. Well, also heads up, GU basketball fans, because now the Zags will play on Thursday after all. Now, they were originally scheduled to play Pacific on Thursday, but that game needed to be postponed due to COVID issues on Pacific's team. But the Zags have taken advantage of that delay to reschedule a game against San Francisco. That was delayed earlier this month. Well, an underwater explosion across the world made waves on Washington shores. The tsunami warning has passed, but now efforts to help the South Pacific island continue.